Welcome back to Smart Nonsense, episode 30-something. I'm Henry. That's Dylan. On Smart Nonsense, we talk about entrepreneurship, self-development, and challenging norms. Dylan is mouthing the script right now. I must be doing it right. Today, we are talking about Excellent Sheep, the book by William Deresiewicz.
Deresiewicz? I want to say Deresiewicz.
I didn't get to hear the intro music with this new setup. I feel like I can't get into this properly without it. Dude.
Whoever's listening.
Got any nonsense for me?
I just want to say first off, before we lose all the viewers, listeners, whatever you call them.
We always lose them right away.
This book, honestly, if you're watching the video of this right now, look at my notes. This is like one page. I have a legit notebook of shit right here that I want to get through.
But you have like 6 different online note managers to not do that.
Do you want to see my notes on the computer too? It's another 6 pages.
No.
It's everywhere. So my mind is racing. We have crazy content coming at you.
Yes. Good. This is an important one. Let's begin by saying the point of the book, and I forgot his name, Deresiewicz. His point. Let's call
Will. Just call him Will. His first name is Will.
Will. I do think the point is not for everyone to not be an excellent sheep or to be a sheep, right? But for the people like you, like me, the 10, 20% of the population that is on the fence or doesn't want to do law, medicine, consulting, finance, you got to listen up because there are more options at bay that just nobody wants to talk about.
Yeah, it's absolute herd mentality. It's the perfect formula for these elite schools. Like, it's very centered at elite schools and why everyone, over half of the people at the top tier schools, go into these finance consulting fields. And there's so much. It's literally like that student, we've just designed them through various reasons to just succeed at whatever bars we set for them. And now the bars that are in front of them, the only clear path is finance or consulting or whatever. So that's why they go out. So this is just our whole mentality in a book. It's just juicy, confirmation bias as always. I love it. But
when it comes to the and then let's really get into it. But when it comes to jumping through hoops and raising the bar, I think it's even more apparent in sports and music. I see it in piano a lot. It's like, or even when we were kids, it's like, who hit the furthest home run in the MLB? Oh, next year someone did twice that, and then 3 times that, and then bats got better, and it was who can drive the furthest? Maybe it's 300 yards. It just keeps getting up and up and up. It's like, are human beings getting better, or are we just getting better at like, well, those are physical. But for piano, at least what I know when it comes to school, college applications, especially because I went through that, is like the things people were auditioning with 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and I talked to my professor a lot about this, were like not super technical, not super rigorous. And now, like, the bar has just been inflated to the moon with what people are auditioning with. The hardest possible pieces, the hardest etudes. Something funky's going on. And I don't like it.
It's like quality of work. You can listen to better stuff, I think. But the problem is we're lacking a lot of creativity and just free thinking, challenging thinking. What I like to, as I spoil the book.
Yeah.
The author says one of the top colleges he would recommend is a second tier liberal arts college. Not the first, not the best, second tier. So like a Reed college, which is funny because he says Reed, and I'm thinking Steve Jobs went to Reed. And then that was even like not creative enough for him or whatever. And so he had to drop out and then audit all his classes. I mean, that's probably the ideal model in Will's mind. But just context, Will, the author, he was an English professor at Yale. So he saw the elitist of the elite just every day grinding it out and not enjoying life, but for some reason thinking they have to do every step that they're making towards this just absolute grind, meritocratic. Is that how you can say?
Yeah, meritocracy.
Yeah, whatever that is. And I was talking to Henry briefly before this. Actually, we talked about this book, 2 months ago? When did we read this?
No. February, March, 6 months ago.
Really?
5 months ago, yeah.
So we talked, and it's one of those books where I'm pacing around my room just spitting ideas because I got so excited. I think, did I recommend it to you or was it the other way around?
No, I think you read it on your own, talked about it a bunch, and then of course it came across my path, and I recommended it back to you. You're like, "No, you idiot! I gave that to you 2 months ago." That was a
That's how
classic
it goes.
Steve Jobs, by the way. Was uh, an employee would suggest something, he would shoot it down, me shooting down the book, and then he'd come back to them with the idea, and they'd be like, "What the fuck, Steve?" Like,
That's actually the
yeah,
ideal for getting your ideas accepted is you want to plant the seeds of the idea, but they create it themselves in theory. So I don't know who's to thank there, you
you
or me or
planted the
whatever,
seed.
but
You planted the seed.
but here's what's funny because we were talking back then, and your brother was at the same school and
Yeah.
had an opportunity at a luncheon to go and meet Will and just hear what he had to say. And
Wait, really quick.
but
So my brother, yeah, a Yale student, was anti this culture of excellent sheep. He was over it. He was sick of his friends studying on a Friday night when he wanted to like watch a football game. Not that those happen on Friday nights, but you get my point. And so Will comes. We're just calling him
what
Will.
the toe mass shit is this?
What happened?
Oh, well, luckily Zoom's recording. I didn't record in Zencaster. Now it's
Really?
recording in Zencaster. No
So
edits. Keep going.
we get
It's
no
all
intro
good. We
music?
still get the audio.
Okay. You are just you need to sleep more. But so Will comes to Yale to speak. I'm sure yeah. Or no, he was there. Whatever it was.
Yeah.
I don't know
He's
if
a
he was there at
professor.
the
So
time.
I think you just have these little luncheons and just have
Right.
students invited. They could come in.
Right.
And I guess your brother just never
My
went.
brother didn't go because he wanted to like study for something.
Right. He
Or-
was busy studying. So he couldn't have this one sort of philosophical mind that's totally going to open him up.
and he's the one, he is supposedly anti-excellent sheep. Yet this opportunity arises right in front of his face at Yale, and he's still
But I don't want to say that I wouldn't do the same thing. I'd like to think I would, but I was trying to think hypothetically too. If, say, Brown cost me $50,000 to attend after 4 years and a Reed College was no debt, zero cost, I'd still really struggle to go to Reed.
Yeah.
I'm so embedded with this mentality, even if the education quality, according to the book, is probably going to be better for my learning, for my ability to challenge society. I'd still probably pick Brown. I couldn't.
and that's why I was so I know you've gawked when I've said like I would have gone to community college for 2 years if I did it again. I went to Brown for those reasons, right? Because of the open curriculum, because of the entrepreneurial aspects of the school. And I still didn't get that just because of the type of student I was in high school and the type of students you're surrounded by. It's like it's so different than it's made out to be on paper.
For context, the reason why I really liked Brown, other than the fact that it was probably the only good school I got into, was the fact that
But what is
it was
good? You know, like
I know, but
yeah.
I'll define
hear you.
good.
I hear you.
I have a whole I want to get through the history of higher education, so I'll talk about how we define good. But Brown was just one of the top schools or whatever, and I got into it, but the rankings, the two highest rankings, Brown was number 1 on student reviews. So students loved it. And number 3 on undergraduate teaching, because it's not a research university or as much of one. So I was like, all right.
Okay, really quick. That's funny too, because he talks about research driven and like liberal arts. At least in the physics department, it was so research driven. So
right. It's still what is it? Is it R1? It's still an R1 university.
Yeah.
So that's just like they have the most research. So it's open curriculum, which means there's no core required classes. You have to hit some certain benchmarks, but it's super loose. And in the 80s, when Will was in school, it was like the hot, like new kind of, I don't know if it was a super hippie, but like just liberal, do your own thing sort of school. Still has that, but it's just even farther towards the pointy student.
I mean, they had like Bob Dylan playing, like they had like basically Woodstock come and play spring weekend. It's not the case. Like it's just a totally different type of student today.
And so I want to get into how we arrived at
how the
college
heck,
today.
Yeah.
Like, I might have to drink some water.
There's so many factors. Right? There's parenting. There's helicopter parenting. There's what? There's the research, which we touched on.
One, I want to go historically, and then right around 1983, that's when it just goes absolute. That's when the parent tiger mom type mentality comes in. So we'll get into that.
Well, okay, you say 1983, let alone like 2009 when it comes to parenting.
It just accelerated. So here's where we start. Right. Let's go to the beginning of this.
Really quick, did you read Coddling of the American Mind?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you should do that, and we should do that next. I think it's a perfect piggyback on this. Yeah.
How crazy is it that he responded to you? What's his name? The professor?
Jonathan Haidt.
Yeah.
That's
crazy.
Yeah. Okay, but another time. History. Right. Take us back, Pat.
Here's
how the
Dylan
heck
Jardon
did we get here?
Just so everyone knows, the second semester of junior year when we took AP US History, I stopped reading the book at like chapter 29, and I think there were 40 something chapters in the APUSH book. And so the last day, right before the AP exam, I just read this like SparkNotes version of the book. Absolutely crushed it. I was talking to myself, running in circles, just memorizing it. I don't think I got a single question wrong on that exam. I slaughtered it.
What does this have to do with anything?
I just want everyone to know I'm awesome. All right. So history, because the history gets me jazzed up when
you are a big history buff. You, one of my few friends that really, really gets into museums, and you'll pay a lot of money for guides and museums, which is cool.
Yeah, that's great. I kind of didn't even realize that about myself.
Big
New York,
buff.
I was in that World Trade Center thing. You all left. I was just 6 hours in there. All right. So let's go back. Beginning of the nation. We could go back even
but
further,
I'm only going to give you like maybe 5 minutes.
I'm not going to monologue. I want you to jump in. I'm going to monologue a lot of it. But all right. So beginning of our nation, we have to think, because it plays such a large role in our DNA as a nation and in terms of higher education, like this founding. We come in, it's an absolute state of nature, right? You got this giant territory and people are just running in and just trying to establish some towns, some I don't know, colonies. Colonies.
Can we get like the drunk history recreations going over this?
Really? Yeah.
Got like
the memes,
people running.
I guess, yeah, we'll see what the editing team can do. But yeah, so they come in here and just colonizing everything, but it's a mad spread. Just everyone's trying to go out and establish their own. Everyone has their religion. So most of the colleges back then were parochial. They're small. They're like, I don't know, even 100 years in, the schools were only like 130 students. So there was no government back then too. So people are just setting up colleges as like, hey, come over to my plot of land because I got this. And they're all bored out of their minds. Super small schools. The government starts to come in, but
where did you get all this? This wasn't in the book, was it?
I did a lot of research because I was going to write a blog post on this, and then I didn't.
And then
so I think that's the best way, is just someone transcribes this, and that's my blog post instead of me writing it. So, okay. God damn, I can't lose my train of thought. So government doesn't play.
You told me to hop in.
I shouldn't have asked, get what you asked for. But all right, government's not a large role. So you have mostly these schools, they have to self-fund. So they become businesses. And the way that they make money is through some tuition. And then hopefully when you're an alumni, you'll donate back.
Bing, bing, bing.
So that's where they make their money. Government does come in a little bit later, but it's mostly like, here's some land grants. If you put a college up, hey, we'll give you some extra land and then you can, a little bit of money, whatever. So we start dispersing. We have, I forget the exact multiple, but like 5 times the amount of colleges in Europe, just like 100 years into the country. And so we got all
they have like 5 times as many churches for what it's worth.
Well, that's what's interesting, okay? Is
really now
the difference between our education and theirs is they have the church and the state strongly supporting all of their universities and colleges.
State here.
Nothing. There's very little support. And so it's all just on the backs of the individual colleges to make money for themselves.
Except for, by the way, sorry, because I'm jumping in, churches getting PPP loans, total infraction of church and state, by the way.
That's Belky's contribution to this whole thing. PPP comes in a
Pope
bit
Francis,
later.
if you I swear to God.
All right. So we're basically a joke because we have these little dink donk universities. I love that word, even though it doesn't exist. These little universities
I
or
should clarify
colleges.
while we're just going crazy. PPP loan, the paycheck protection, right? Sponsored by the government, going directly to churches that already have. Okay, continue.
Thanks for that.
That's like 2020. I didn't want to confuse that with 1740. So,
all right. Yeah, I
although
fast forwarded. So we're
1740 wouldn't
100
be
years
America.
in. At this point, we're 100 years in. 1880, we're right around there. And so we have this big decision because we're the joke. We're the laughing stock whenever Europeans come here. They're like, look at these crappy little colleges that aren't teaching anything. And meanwhile, you have like the Cambridge type schools. The Germans are crushing it. But there's this strong question of two different routes that we can take as a nation in terms of higher education. And I even drew this in my notes. I'm like, there's a world war that we are not talking about. It is this world war of higher education.
Wow.
We have
World War Zero.
World War Zero, pre-World War One, because this is 1880s. And you have, in the right corner, you have the British. And they got their liberal arts colleges, right? Where we're trying to build character. We want men of character, because no women allowed back then. We want people of character, let's say. And the Germans in the left corner. The Germans, they're the researchers. They want your vocational. They want the science. They want that higher education, like postdoc stuff. So now we're back in the US. And what do? Do we take the college route? Because we can't do both. We're not the best at that. We try to do both, but we got to focus on one. So do we go college with the British or Germans?
Focus on wrapping up.
I got to focus on keep going because this is a podcast. I can go for hours. So here's what's going on.
This is great, by the way. I don't know where you got this.
Guess who wins World War Zero, Belky?
Probably the Germans.
The Germans crush. They got off to a great start with World War Zero. Dropped the ball in the next two. But here's what happens. All right. We start taking in all this research money. It's like we don't get money from the state. So guess what? We'll get a little for research, and then also private companies start coming in and giving money. That's going to basically lead. The whole reason I'm saying this is because we're a research-focused university, and that's where we get all funding because we're businesses, etc. So what happens is like a little bit of money comes in from research, but it really goes crazy in 1957. Belky, you know what happens in 1957?
My grandma was 20.
Your grandma was 20?
Yeah, she didn't go to college.
Mom was -2.
Okay.
Think Russians. What did those Russian bats do?
Cold War?
Well, kind of.
I don't know.
They send a little dinky thing of iron. I don't know what it was made out of. Let's call it iron. Into low Earth orbit. You are...
Oh, Spetsnaz. Or, okay. Sputnik.
Yeah.
First mission in Earth's orbit.
Exactly. So we get all scared. We're like, shit.
Spetsnaz. That's like their CSI.
Yeah, true. Their little armed services. Yeah. Call of Duty. So that's what happens. They send that into space. We get all scared and we're like, all right, we got to dump a lot of money into research. And so now these American universities that need the money are like, all right, looks like we're going to double down on research, double down, quadruple down. I think it was like 5 to 10 times as much research money gets dumped in just because of this space race. And so the teaching goes away from liberal arts, like how do we build character? How do we have people think for themselves to, we just want the professors to teach on the side, but really do research because that's what makes the money. That was a lot. I do want to say, because now that we're in the 60s leading to today, absolute game changer in 1983.
What happened in 1983? Helicopter parents, right?
It's the start. It's when they have some more fodder to work with. The helicopter, they can rain down with their...
That's 2 Ds.
2 Ds of fodder. So 1983, we get a magazine. I don't mean an ammo drum magazine. I mean the U.S. News and World Report.
Yes,
Bing,
rankings.
Bang, Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah. The rankings come in. Guess what? Colleges, everyone's like, oh, Harvard's pretty good, but how much better is it than this school? Well, about 20 ranking points.
Yep.
So now the same thing that was happening to students around the same time with SATs, where, oh, here's the student, let's just slap an IQ score on them. Here's your SAT score.
You know the Fisk or whatever, they're like this big college guide publisher. You can buy like a 400-page book with just like they've ranked every school with a letter grade, like, you know, Greek life, this grade. I mean,
it's great. People love to distill all this creative, different kind of experiences, everything down into one single number. That's just so tangible.
meaningless.
But this tangible number means that everyone is obsessed with the status of what number school you got into. Brown, 13.
Really?
That's the number. It was when I was looking at it. But like the number is just so clear. Everyone's looking at it. The Tiger moms, I don't want to single out moms, but like Tiger parents, everyone's like, you have to get into this school to succeed. And so that's the whole arc of history to set up the environment where everyone's competing to get in the highest ranked school in the magazine.
Wow. And compound that those rankings, like you just said, the parents saying this is what you need to do to succeed. Also, the shift to kids being an extension of their parents, which we've talked about, right? And parents living vicariously through their children's achievements signals, really. It's funky. It's funky. We should, I wanted to touch too a long time ago, midway through that history, on Greek life, why it's still around, and the donors, right? Because so much of the university is catering to those large donors that are going to fund them down the line. And the reason Greek life is still around, maybe this was in here, maybe it was in Coddling of the American Mind, I can't remember. But
Coddling, I don't remember it from this.
Okay, Coddling. 2 reasons, right? So first off, like at Brown, the president doesn't really have control over 6,500 students, right? However, the president can control 20 students that are all presidents of Greek life. So they're around as a way for the president to basically reprimand, or the opposite of that, the presidents of the Greek life, so that they can have all their little cogs follow.
I mean, it's a business, dude.
Yeah.
It just mirrors everything with this hierarchy. And
Exactly.
that's how you propagate a message. So that's fascinating. Yeah. I didn't know that. Brown didn't have a big Greek life.
No, not necessarily. But Greek life also fosters alumni, and alumni having like this tight-knit, good experience where they're then willing to donate.
Well,
that's why they won't get rid of it.
I think we talked about it in Excellent Sheep, or Will did, with let's say 1960. I don't remember the exact date, but these higher education elite schools, it was like a frat boys just hanging out, just partying, like Ivy League sports and everything like that. It wasn't strenuous. Like, it was mostly, how do we preserve the upper echelons of society? They had requirements too for Harvard of like, you had to know Greek and Latin, and public schools didn't teach them. So only private school students could get in. Just fiercely keeping out the Jews. It was a bad place. Like, we try and look down on Germany, but we're doing the same. And then it transitioned. I don't know. I forget why it transitioned. I think it just got out of hand, and we started accepting better quality students. But
I think it was as the applicant pools, as more and more people started going to college too, that's when things shifted. Like, even when our parents went, or their generation went to school, completely different monster.
You ever read John F. Kennedy's Harvard application?
No, but I reckon it's something like, "Let me in, please."
It's literally like that. It looked like a third grader wrote it. Yeah. It's a joke. And I kind of mentioned,
like, all the Kennedys went to Harvard.
Yeah. So it's just like, you're pretty much in. And that's what happens nowadays too, is you get X amount of international students that get in. You have X amount of athletes that get in, and then X amount of, what do you call the legacy students that get in?
Yeah. So
the pool's even smaller, and it's crazy because you go in, and I remember this feeling of orientation. Like, hey, it wasn't like this in the past, but now it's, hey, you made it. Like, the acceptance rate is so low. How'd you get in? You're awesome. Pat on the back, pat on the back, pat on the back.
Welcome to the club.
Exactly. But before, Will was saying how because he went to Yale, right? He went to Yale in his undergrad, I think.
I don't know.
He went to some Ivy League school. I think it was Yale. And there it was totally different mentality in the 80s. It was, hey, we accepted you, but we could have easily accepted 10 of you. There were so many qualified applicants. You have to earn your spot. You have to really just love education and buy into this. And it's fallen off since then.
So it's changed a lot. And in the sense, because I think Welcome to the Club was directly from the last chapter. But it's like once you're in the door, it's very hard to get kicked out. You see this at the Ivy Leagues. You see it at the most elite where it's like, the gentleman's B or like everyone, there's grade inflation. Like everyone does well because you're in the club. And then many say, this was also a direct quote from the book, like, oh, we're not entitled, we work hard. But the fact of the matter is there are, like you just said, there are many people just like you working just as hard, if not harder, that don't have that opportunity to go to the elite school. I think Naval says it a lot too. Naval Ravikant, basically like that corner grocery store clerk or owner is working just as hard, if not harder than, my mom, the doctor, or you, the startup founder.
I mean, yeah, you see me and I'm just listening to this book on my bed all day.
Right.
Like, it's yeah, I don't want to say it's just working. In Naval's case, I think he says it under the context of working smarter, like work where you have leverage.
Right.
But yeah, everyone's working hard. It's just different types of work. Like maybe there's a kid going to Reed College, but he's paying his way through school by working at McDonald's. Like he's working hard too.
Right.
There's so much, but I do think what you said with once you're in, it's so hard to get kicked out. Like I've seen it. I've seen.
Oh, I meant metaphorically, but also physically. Yeah.
Well, not like for bad at whatever. For like you can't fail a class at Brown. We just don't put it on your resume or on your transcript, I should say.
There's so many like checks in place to make sure you look your best, so Brown looks its best, and right. I'm sure all the others.
It's interesting too because you look at it and it all starts from just us not having the church and the state fund it means we're businesses, means today everything is just money related. Like this is the most quotable book I think I've ever read. He's just a great author. Will is
this one?
Yeah, I love it. I have so many quotes I couldn't even write them down because there are too many. But he's like, instead of I should have written it down.
I might remember.
Instead of humanities, we have amenities. And so his big push, I guess we didn't summarize it properly, but like we're very STEM focused and very vocationally focused. And it's a problem because we're training people who can't think for themselves. Like, can you imagine going into a class and the teacher's like, all right, well, here's the problem set for this week. And you're like, well, why?
Literally.
Can you imagine asking a teacher, why are we doing this problem set? I've always, every single time I get it, probably because I'm lazy, but like people don't question. They're just like, they already hand it back. Yeah. And who was I listening to? I was listening to some podcast and they're like, they had their students listen to the Gettysburg Address and the test was like, oh, memorize it and you're going to have to write it down verbatim. And all of the students did it perfectly.
Yeah.
Like we can do that. That's what we're trained to do.
Yeah.
Actually, as we're going on tangent, maybe I have no idea how long this is going. Maybe we'll stop it soon after this because part 2, I want to get into how we would change things. What sort of direction we could go. Hopefully you have time for part 2. Bill.
Yeah.
Why do I distract myself?
What
the hell was I just saying?
Come on.
You don't listen either.
No, I was. But then you got me starting to think about part 2, things I want to change. And now here I am sitting here thinking about things I want to change.
We're going to have to
rewind. Rewind the tape. Can we talk about research really quick?
Yeah, talk about research.
This is something I found, especially in the physics department, is because professors are so rewarded for doing their research, they've obviously, as a result, started to teach less. One, that means like having fellows or TAs teach things, like not equipped to do that. But we're rewarding professors for doing their research. And so the incentives are just backwards. And then because they're doing that, because they're so preoccupied with their research, we've come to this kind of unspoken agreement between professors and students that, okay, you're going to be gone doing your research, and in exchange, you're going to award higher grades. That's how, like,
I think they termed it in the book the mutual non-aggression pact,
something tacit agreement.
Yeah, basically, it's like, hey, you're going to give us grade inflation, easy A's, yes, and we're going to review you well so that you don't get
exactly. And as you go up and up, especially in physics, I know same in engineering. Ask our friends. As you go up and up, and the classes get smaller and smaller, and the professors are doing more and more intense research, they're spending less time on the classes, less time grading work, less time allocating grades, and it just gets easier to pass classes. It's like the most backwards thing you can think of. And it's hard to find good professors for that reason.
I feel like we're at 30 minutes, and we're going to do 2 parts. So let's cut it here. I want to review my notes so I don't brain fart again on a good idea. Maybe it's in there, and I'll just start it off with that. But that's part 1. Part 2 of Excellent Sheep, the breakdown with Belky and Dylan, coming at you in 2 seconds or a day.
See ya.